do men find masturbation either their partners or their own distasteful, and if so, why? And even if they do and if they don't, how do I introduce that as an option, perhaps in a way that doesn't seem so threatening? I feel like I've said, why don't you fly to the moon tomorrow? I mean, the way they look at me is like, lady, you must be kidding. And I feel as though that's the only option for the rock and the hard place that people are doing.
I know all men got taught that was not okay as kids, and I mean there was some weirdness around that with your mother, and like she didn't even talk about it. And I've heard men even talk about it. I heard a man talk about being beaten by his father when he was caught doing it. I don't know how much a woman's experience is the same of that. So we carry a lot of that stuff in there. So that's part of it. Speaking for myself and our relationship, it's not a problem on either side. That's my personal experience.
Oh, gosh. Well, I had a couple of things. I think generally, probably all the things we have about masturbation and self-touching. I think certainly as a young man, before I realized it really wasn't, I don't know, I really got message that it wasn't okay to masturbate. But I think when my mother started having to bleach the sheets a lot, I began to get messages that maybe there was something going on, something, okay? But I think more important about masturbation, I think masturbation, mutual masturbation, is a perfectly good way of having a sexual experience. However, I think it occurs after you've gotten past the stage of the rejection. In other words, masturbation is the thing you do after you've been rejected. Okay? So masturbation gets tied in with all this other kind of social sexualization. That masturbation is the second choice because you didn't get the primary agenda met. I don't think that that's true in a rational sense, but I think kind of in an emotional sense, in the heat of the moment, if you will, that it gets bound up in that somehow. That masturbation would be acceptable if I were already in this relationship and had gone past my rejection, but that same masturbation act at this point in time is like second choice, it's not getting the home run. And that's not how it works.
I guess the thoughts going through my head. When you're with a woman, you want participation there. So to masturbate myself while I'm with a woman, that's rare. I'd much prefer that she masturbate me, to have that contact. It's when I'm by myself that I masturbate. And that is fine, again, for a certain period of time. I can do that only so much. And then, you want the woman's contact. And it's one of those differences, male-female. I get sometimes that a woman is okay with masturbating longer than a male is willing to masturbate before he wants contact with the other sex.
My adolescent male clients are quite clear with me that if they do not do it, they have not achieved. I think that goes on for a lot of years, and it's not really easy to make that go on.
We have not achieved manhood here.
I'll come out of my attitudes toward masturbation. I find, for me, when I'm involved on a personal level in relationships, that if a woman is, if we reach some point where I want intercourse and she doesn't, I feel fine about masturbating when I'm with her, if she is touching me, not necessarily my penis, but touching me on my thighs or my legs or my stomach or my face or kissing me or is in some way connected to me, involved with me during the process of my masturbation, then I feel like the basic message is, I want to be involved with you, but I don't want to actually have intercourse now for whatever reason happens to be the reason at that point in time. Conversely, I also feel like usually when I finish having sexual intercourse, that is if I come inside of her, that part of what I want to be asking her is, do you want me to continue touching you? Or do you want me to touch you non-masturbatorily while you touch yourself masturbatorily? And so she knows that I am there for her on some level, even though what I would ideally like to do On a biological level, when I'm finished coming, is to roll over and go to sleep. Biologically, we clean out 18 sacks of fluid from our system. And it's a much different experience for men than it is for women in the sense that one has this type of level, if you see the charts of that, the other has this type of level and that. And so that I think it does help women to know that at least we are doing something that is opposed to what biologically our inside feelings are telling us we would like to do. But I think it is also important for men to be making that contact physically with a woman who isn't complete in her cycle.
Move to an area where we can talk about what we can talk to young people about being involved in a sexual relationship, how women can respond to the man if they don't want to be sexually active, but still be loving and not be rejecting the man. So I would like to kind of move on that area for personal growth for ourselves individually and for what we can talk to young people. And dealing with young people, it's sounding very clear from the man that, okay, they know it's going to be rejection. And if we're dealing with these young people on a daily basis and we're telling them that if the guy is going to use the condom and he's putting himself at risk, and we're talking about adolescence, that I would like some ideas of what I can tell these young women about dealing with the man and talking with him so that he's not going to feel rejected, that they will have an honest and open relationship, and that the man, on the other hand, won't be feeling rejected either in this relationship without actually having heel penetration.
Just quickly, one of the things.
A young man wants to know if he's attractive or not. You can certainly tell him he's attractive without saying yes or intercourse. So often that's such a lonely moment. Let's do it, let's do it. No, no. That there's only one simple, sharp message involved in it, rather than a couple of messages that we mitigate.
I think, in general, one of the problems, even that, we have all the new sexuality. Everybody's talking about sex. Everybody's talking about sex. But I don't necessarily know that people are really dealing with their vulnerability with regard to issues of sexuality. We talk a lot about sexual performance, sexual dysfunction, sexually transmitted diseases, but in terms of feelings, fears, the meaning of sexuality. And I found, I was Planned Parenthood education, go to the classroom, play value games with kids and all the stuff they teach when you go to learn how to do that sort of stuff. And what I find, or what I believe, is that if there's some way for young people to deal with sexual issues with themselves, with their peers, with boys and girls together, in a way that's not necessarily so threatening, group settings and whatnot, then I think it's a lot more possible for them to discuss issues of sex between them before they get to that go, no-go situation that's going to feel like so much rejection. You can talk about your values about sex. If virginity is important to you, if if you have a sense of whatever conditions might have to exist for you to feel okay being sexual, if those kind of things are a little more upfront, I think it's a lot easier to be able to interact and deal with these kind of sexual crises when the energy levels are different. Now, it's very, very hard for young people to do, but I'm finding that, dealing with 14, 15, 16-year-old kids today, they're a hell of a lot more sophisticated than they were when I was 14, 15, and 16. And so I'm very happy. I think it may become possible now that they can do that sort of thing, so they don't end up getting to this moment when the endorphins are racing, through their brain, and they have to make a split-second decision. They sort of set up some ground rules. And I really don't know the way around it. If a woman were to declare to me her sexual values up front, which would be very risky, I think, for a lot of women. It's nice not having to declare that up front, I think, in a way, for women. It would make a lot of the interaction a heck of a lot easier along the way. And I think it was very difficult for adults to do. It was awfully difficult for adolescents to do, but I don't know any other way around it, to be able to create that space when you can be rational, when there is no pressure. So therefore, when the time comes, you can act mutually in a way that doesn't get anybody hurt.
It's particularly difficult for adolescents when you can't talk about it in school. Most parents won't talk about it with you. Gender rules forbid boys and girls talking to each other about it. So what boys have to do is talk to each other, and in that pool of ignorance then, because there's an information coming in from any place else about it. And that's pretty poor.
I
I think one of the things that we deal with in working with people is they've already gotten to the point where they've had intercourse with somebody, and they're going to need to tell them, for whatever reason, that they can't continue that kind of behavior, which I think is a completely different point than coming at it together, deciding not to, because they've already gotten to point C, and now they have to go back to what it's going to look like point A and B. And do you have any thoughts on ways to approach that particular thing, as opposed to the initial time of
to discuss it when you're not sitting in the bed undressed. And I think that's something that I offer to clients all the time. You know, you don't do this when everyone's breathing hot and heavy, has an erection, etc. Do this at a time when you're clothed and rational. And that's a very practical hint you can offer to people. Don't go home and say, wait until, you know, you are ready to begin the intercourse to whip out the rubber because we have to use this for the next 7 days. You know, like, do it via, and I tell them, I also encourage people to use, you know, your experience here at Planned Parenthood to make this a bridge over which this is a good time to go home and talk about these things.
In a sense, the very best that I can leave you with today was the first experience that I learned when I made my transition to speaking around the country, explaining women's issues to men, to beginning to understand that men also had issues as well. The first thing that I had to learn to do was to not correct the men any more than I had stood up at women's meetings and corrected women, was to not explain to them what they meant in my terms any more than I would stand up at my own meetings and explain to women what they meant in my terms. But rather to ask questions like, tell me more about what quantity means to you. Tell me more about what power means to you. And to facilitate, as women in traditional socialization would learn very well to do, feelings, and women in therapeutic situations often learn to do. And yet, in the last 15 years, we have had almost no support for that perspective of the world. Self-improvement books have basically been called books that have interpreted things in terms of men being seen as the foolish choices, the men who hate women, the Peter Pans, and so on. And so there's been absolutely nothing in the environment that has said, tell me more about your view of the world. The Planned Parenthood counselor that can begin to just draw that out without having to feel any obligation for a while to explain the woman's point of view, the Planned Parenthood point of view, will find that she will probably take the biggest step possible in making Planned Parenthood a safe place for the male client to come to and to be heard at. So that was one of the reasons I went back to working on the questioning on the way out. The tools that we learn to have as therapists, facilitators, as humanists, as growth people, are just plain tools that can be used, the exact same sharpness can be used against the person. That is not a feeling. This is a feeling. Defining what feelings are, and which have the effect of shutting somebody up. When people are exploring what their feelings are, there will be blame, there will be anger, there will be feelings that are appropriate, feelings that are based on misinformation, misperception, accurate perception, accurate information, and so on, and they'll all be mixed in together. Some poorly expressed, and well expressed. The men who need the greatest amount of help, need the listening ear beyond the poorly expressed feeling, especially in the lower middle class or lower class environment that many of you are also tapping into. So for me, the process at this point is far more important than the content. The content I have in Why Men Are Where They Are in much deeper form than we've been able to share it here today. But I hope I've been able to share a few of the surface types of dimensions of that. When I talk about men this or women this, what I'm speaking about is the male experience of women is, or men, the female experience of men often is. And that doesn't mean that everybody needs to fit that experience in order for men to learn that they will get the least amount of rejection if they do these certain types of things. What a man in adolescence is concerned about is not the exception to the rule, but what's going to get him the most acceptance and the most approval. And he knows if he's head of the king of the football team, he's going to get the most acceptance. And if he's giving some intellectual speech in class about the importance of using birth control, he's going to get the least acceptance. At least unless he's in a subgroup that gives him more acceptance. And so a lot of what I'm talking about in broad sweep terms are experiences of the world that are the most frequent experience that each sex has. That's what they have to deal with to get approval on that level of issue. There were a lot of things that we dealt with before that I want to come back to too, but I want to deal with a few basic solution areas as well and ways out of some of these boxes. One of which is the issue that I dealt with briefly before on sexual initiative taking. One of the things that I think that women and men can do more effectively together is to deal with the issue of how to take initiatives so that some of those 150 areas initiatives between eye contact and sexual contact can be shared to a greater extent, so that men don't get the experience of the world that if they keep trying, they will get something or get rejected, and if they don't, they won't. And I think I went over briefly before that one of the things I think that a woman can do in that area is to say to a man, if he's going too quickly, I will come back and take initiatives when I am ready, but then she needs to follow through and do that. Let me explain what I mean by that. Basically, in every relationship, a relationship language gets developed very quickly. So if I meet Linda at a party, or and I say to her, would you like to come out with me after the party and go for a drink? And Linda says, no, not really that interested, or makes up some reason. I say, come on, Linda, just you and I, let's take a little while to go for a drink. And she says, yes. I have learned that a no can be overcome by persisting to level 1. And at the beginning of our relationship language. If then I go ahead and I'm out at the bar with her, and I reach over to hold her hand, and she takes her hand away to pick up the drink, and I've gotten one no. And I've learned though that no, if I pursue the level 1, might turn into yes. Then the second time, I reach over to take her hand, and she says, oh, you see this over there? Gotten 2 rejections. She's been polite both times. Then the third time I take her hand, and she accepts my hand, I've learned that if I pursue to level 2, to the level 3, I can turn the no's into the maybes. Now, if in that relationship, so we've already developed a language between the two of us, that is that at least 2 pursuits are often needed to get a no to mean a yes in this relationship. Once that relationship language is developed, if a woman backs off from a kiss and says no, what he responds to without articulating it is, that's only now 1. My experience is that it takes at least 3 tries to get her to say yes. Therefore, there's nothing in my relationship language with her that has taught me to back off at level 2 or at level 3 until I try level 3. So the woman can come into Planned Parenthood and say, I told him no twice. And from the man's perspective, he says, yeah, well, in fact, he did tell me no twice, and I have no idea why I disobeyed that now that my cock isn't hard. But when both his cock was hard and his relationship language taught him that 2 no's meant no, 2 no's meant no, but the third pursuit could mean a yes, he tried the third pursuit. And maybe with his cock hard, a 4th pursuit as well. Even if relationship language did not warrant that technically. And so he's accused of acquaintance rape, or he's accused of being overbearing. And when in fact, from his perspective, on some level, it all seemed to make sense, what he was doing. But he can't articulate that to you. So I think that that one of the things that I think that we need to share with our clients is the importance of relationship language and what types of early signals those things communicate. I just gave an example of relationship language on the sexual level. Change that to relationship language on the date level. Carol and I are out, and the meal comes, and Carol is talking to me about how independent she is and how important it is that she be paid attention to and listened to, attended to, that she really cares a great deal about her career. The bill comes, and Carol hesitates and goes to the woman's room. What's the real thing I heard?
She wants to be taken care of.
She wants to be taken care of. And she disappears to the woman's room. The bill comes, and she doesn't look at it. What am I hearing? She wants to be taken care of. The bill comes, and I ask her, how can we take care of this? And she looks at me startled and said, oh, I'll take care of my share. What am I really hearing? She wants to be taken care of. Why am I hearing that even though she said she'll take care of her share? Because she was startled. I saw that in her eyes. I suddenly feel like a piker. I know that I feel terrible for having even asked the question, having posed the possibility. I move right into thinking that I've screwed it up totally. And so, verbally, she's volunteered to share her bill, but in behavior, body language-wise, she never looked at it. She let me pick it up. If I allowed space, she let me pick it up. I got the message. And so the relationship language might say to me, I want to be my own independent person, but the relationship language is really saying to me, I want to have the option of being my own independent person. And also have you around to take care of me when I want that to be taken care of, but I don't want you to ever condescend to me, look down to me, cut me off, not respect my opinion, or not respect my independence, my career, my work, or my focus. From his perspective, she wants it both ways. And he doesn't have the option, he believes, of having it both ways himself. He has the option of paying for the check or feeling like a relationship tiger. So one of the illusions of liberation that has happened for many of us in the last 15 years has been that we've had the illusion that the woman who can take care of herself is the independent woman, or the woman who believes in equality. When in fact, that's not the male experience of that, because the woman who takes care of herself is a woman able to take care of herself, but a relationship involves two people, which means, and oftentimes 3 or 4 or 5 people with children, and that means somebody has to take care of the child care and the housework, and therefore somebody has to be able to do more than take care of one person in a household with 3 or 4 people. And so a woman who is defined as a career woman because she earns enough money to take care of herself is not an equal woman in a relationship with 3 or 4 people. She's only learned to take care of one person on a financial level, not some combination of 3 or 4 people on a financial level combined with 1 to 3 or 4 people on a home care, child care level. And in order for that whole thing to be split, she has to be taking care of either 3 or 4 people on a financial level, or expect the man not to be sharing the housework. That is, either being both equally contributing financially over the next 10 or 15 years to what the expectations of the home are. Let me backtrack on that because I mumbled that through. One of the male experiences of what our obligations is to succeed occurs when oftentimes women will say, I would like a man to share the child care and share the housework. And one of the things that really pisses me off is that I'm working full-time or I'm working part-time and I'm not and therefore, if I am working full-time, I expect the man to be sharing the housework and the child care as much as I am. Now, from a rational, immediate point of view, that makes a lot of sense. But just as women have learned the difference between psychologically sharing responsibility for the housework versus sharing responsibility for child care, men have intuitively sensed that there's a difference between helping with the housework versus sharing responsibility with the housework as there is helping with the economic responsibilities versus sharing economic responsibilities. And what sharing economic responsibilities basically means, on a general type of level, is sitting down with your partner, figuring out that if the home you're living in is worth $50,000 or $150,000, that $150,000 means about $250,000 worth of mortgage money over the next 10 to 20, 25 years, plus $150,000 per child on the average, means how do the two of us sit down and figure out how we're going to earn that $2 or $3 million over the next 20 years, and also take care of the children and the housework combined. That is sharing economic responsibility. Very few men experience their wives sitting down and saying, how can I, with you, share economic responsibility for all the insurances, the economic burdens, the fire, the automobiles, the repairs, and everything else that will come up financially, without any option to back out and without any option to take a job that earns less money, unless I give you the option to take that job that earns less money. And as men see a woman moving more toward that direction, he begins to intuitively recognize that there's no way he can hold her unless he shares the child care and the housework. He begins, because when there's a woman involved with the child care, she sees herself as having a 24-hour-a-day responsibility. When there's a man involved with supporting children to a greater extent than his wife is, even if they're both working full-time, he has a 24-hour responsibility around the financial obligation. So he doesn't see himself as giving that up. Yes, Susan? Yes, Susan?
My name is Kathy. I'd like to comment on the fact that women earn like 59 cents to the dollar to men, so that women are often choosing or trying to hold the financial part of responsibility, but really it's not, society does not give them the option.
Yes. But the question that Kathy asked is that, can I comment on what I've made in relation to, the comment that I've made in relation to sharing economic responsibility versus the reality institutionally that women earn 59 cents to the dollar for men. Okay, let's look at that very carefully. First, women earn 69 cents to the dollar for each job, full-time job that women hold versus a man who earns who works in the workforce full-time. That's the true statistic. However, here's the deceit of that statistic. When you look at the U.S. Labor Bureau's, Department of Labor Bureau statistics, you find the following. That when $1 to 69 cents is being compared, what is being compared is frequently a man holding 2 jobs with a woman holding 1 job. The U.S. Department of Labor Statistics says a person holding a full-time job, which can be a person holding 2 jobs or 1 job, and it can also be a person working as little as 35 hours a week, or a person working as much as 60 hours a week, or a person working as little, all this can be checked out with the U.S. Department of Labor Statistics, or a person working as little as 26 weeks a year, or as much as 52 weeks a year. So then let's look at what's the average on these things, which create the average statistic. The average statistic is created by the average man who on the workplace full-time works an average of 8 hours more per week than the average woman who works in the workplace full-time. When you average in everything together, that creates the average. Secondly, women choose jobs that they know ahead of time pay less. That is, a man on the average. A man knows he cannot go into nursing, not go into elementary school teaching, not go into certain jobs like French literature, because he knows that even a doctorate in French literature will not give him the ability to do the things he thinks is necessary to do to live without rejection. So he chooses a career that earns more. So when we look carefully at the data of women receiving master's degrees, we find that even women receiving master's degrees, 72% of master's degrees are achieved in 6 traditionally female fields. that tend to pay less than fields that men occupy to a higher extent but tend to pay more. Third, when a woman has been working between the ages of 35 and 45, she, and as a professional woman, she is on the average 10 fewer years in the workforce than a professional man between those ages. Fourth, when a woman and a man decide to have children, the woman as of 1986 is 43 times more likely to leave the workplace for family reasons than is the man. That doesn't mean the man is bad or the woman is bad. It means the woman and man who are married make a joint decision to have the woman leave the workplace 43 times more frequently for 6 months or longer than the man. All of those impact the work statistics. They impact the work statistics to such an extent that if you control for one factor only, never married versus married, that the woman who's never married earns 93% of what never married men earn in the workplace. Black women with children at home earn $1 for each 59 cents that white women with children at home earn in the workplace. Did you get that one? Black women with children at home earn $1 on the workplace for every 59 cents that white women with children at home earn. Why? White women in the workplace work less with children at home than black women in the workplace. That statistic of black women in the workplace earning $1 does not mean that the society discriminates in favor of black women. It means that black women put more time into the workplace when they have children at home than white women do. When I did a year's research on that data and submitted it to McGraw-Hill, they said, sorry, Warren, we cannot print it. You've made your point, but it will not sell books. The data is so tough to hear that not enough people want to hear it, that a publishing house will be willing to publish it. That's the summary of a few factors out of 13 major factors, almost all of which mitigate. It's absolutely impossible to determine who earns more when you control for those factors. You can get a biased person in either place, which doesn't mean that there isn't discrimination against women, or there isn't discrimination in favor of men or women. It means that one cannot determine when the amount of education, amount of years of the job, the amount of background in that industry are controlled for. No one has done a study that controls for all of those factors. Lynn?
Yes, I can make a comment, and that is that I think one of the problems is that money, like engineers who earn a lot more than a social worker, well, is an engineer really more important than a social worker? I just want to make that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. $150,000 a year and pay a lot less. I'm not saying that to please this group. You already know that. I don't say things to please people very much. But that's just where my values are. The important thing, I think, in looking at the world is that a lot of men and women both have values. And both, when we're young, we ideally desire to care and do things for society. What men do is they look and say, my God, if I'm going to do something for society, given this society, I'm not going to get paid enough to be anything but rejected. Because in many respects, a nurse, in the process of caring for her family, nurturing somebody at home, and also caring in an institutional setting, is contributing as much in terms of her total life as a doctor is. One can argue it either way, but you have a relatively equal contribution in many respects. And the man looks at the world and says, I can't afford to be a nurse. My mother would have set me up, all the things I took care of before. And so the man ends up going off, doing the things he knows will give him more acceptance, and in the process, making reading about relationships a secondary value. It becomes a secondary value because it's our secondary area of acceptance. Until we get the primary area of acceptance, nothing else counts. So Alan Alda gets valued for being loving, but only because he's Alan Alda. There's a lot of loving, tender, open, vulnerable, caring men in the world. And if they're artists or actors who are working part-time or freelance writers who aren't successful yet, they don't tend to find a lot of competition for themselves.
I'm confused about I have a penchant for, but neither do I want to tell him what he ought to want from me as a clinician. So it really poses a dilemma.
Okay. And especially if I relate to her at all at a clear level, and I'm at all attracted to her, if I